Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Sidra Iqbal here, and I'd like to welcome you to a very exclusive conversation, which is brought to you by Premier Consulting. Premier Consulting promises growth for Pakistani businesses, and it allows you to expand and explore overseas options for your businesses. This conversation is going to be about the potential that you can explore and how do you go about it? What are going to be some of the steps? So if you'd like that information, stay tuned because this one is going to be full of insights. My guests today are talking about overcoming challenges for Pakistani businesses. We have with us, of course, the force behind Premier Consultancy Group. We have with us Mr. Hammad Farooqi, who is the CEO of Premier Consultancy. He specializes in advising entrepreneurs on suitable residency or citizenship by investment programs, which allow them not only to explore international markets, but also help them to find a tax jurisdiction that can be ideal for their future. Welcome, Hammad Saab. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
Our second guest today has an equally diverse career spanning over energy, IT, and the public sector. Very recently, he's gotten some very dynamic people together, and he is the chair of the board for ExD, which is Excellence Delivered. Of course, very ambitious. We have with us Mr. Sajjad Syed. Thank you, Sajjad sir, for being here. We'll be drawing from your experience cross industries and across markets. Thank you for making time for us today. A word of advice for all the people who will be joining us in this conversation. If you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and someone from our team is going to get back to you. Someone from Premier Consultancy is going to be getting in touch with you with all the answers for your queries. Hammad Saab, let's unpack this with you. When we talk about growth potential, there are some inherent problems and barriers, specifically for developing countries and more specifically for Pakistan. What is the biggest challenge, in your opinion, in the current times?
I think from my point of view, the biggest challenge is yourself. If once you overcome the hurdle and your mindset that it can't be done or it's very difficult to be done, then everything is possible. Yeah, I have been running, our accounting business in the UK, and we have helped hundreds of entrepreneurs to come and settle their business in UK, and they come from all sorts of countries, developing countries, East European countries, and some of those countries have far bigger challenges compared to Pakistanis. So I think it's all about your mindset. Planning ahead, and everything is possible.
I think that's a brilliant response. Sajjad Saab, ExD is focused on IT, and IT seems to be the silver lining for a number of Pakistani businesses and entrepreneurs. They're really very much in demand, but being geographically located in Pakistan, is that really a disadvantage?
Yes and no, and to take Hammad Saab's part a bit forward. Yes, willingness and ability, I'd see there are two reasons, two things one needs to evaluate, willingness and ability. So willingness is part one. You need to first have the willingness that, look, that is my goal, that's my objective, I want to go to it. I think, and in that particular area, there's Pakistanis, throughout history, we tend to be a bit conservative, right? I always tell people that, when CPEC was coming from China to Pakistan, the same road goes from Pakistan to China as well, right? So while we were worried about Chinese exporting stuff to us and as our imports increasing, I mean, we could also look at it as the road going back up into China, where we could export our goods and services. And if I am always a firm believer that if Philips and Haier and all these companies can come from China, and Samsung can come from South Korea and come and sell here, why can't we go to South Korea and China and sell there?
Indeed.
However, so that's the willingness and ambition part. Yeah, but having said that, there are challenges, especially in IT. We started a company with the mere $2,000, frankly, when I started it in 2010. Now we are, alhamdulillah, in 7-8 countries. We're doing projects in Iraq and Saudi and Qatar and US and whatnot. The challenges are twofold for our companies to grow globally. One it is very difficult, especially in IT, when you grow globally, you have to buy companies and organizations there. It's very difficult to remit capital out of Pakistan. So you have to set up some a shell company in Dubai and then make that bigger, make it cash rich, and then use those funds. And also that becomes a challenge because remitting capital out of Pakistan is a challenge. There's a legal government restrictions on that. And not just now, even earlier as well. The other challenge is, of course, there's an issue of branding. And yes, we do have a lot of workforce. We do have a lot of young people coming in, and that remains our strength. But the training is a problem. They're not as well trained if we really look at it and compare them with our global competitors. So a lot of effort on skill development has to be done. And I'm glad subsequent governments have realized that. They are putting in an effort. But a lot more needs to be done. We are a bit behind the curve. And in case we want to set up, especially, and I'll talk only sort of as an IT person, because that's the industry I understand, the amount, we need to sort of declare a skill emergency in this country. When a lot of work went into China, I was listening to something that, Apple CEO was saying. They didn't go to China because it was cheaper compared to other countries. There were other countries where it was cheaper to build their iPhones and stuff. They went to China because the number of people you could find who were skilled in hundreds of thousands was the competitive advantage of China. So whilst it's very difficult for us to fix the overall education system, we can, however, build skills very quickly, like, soldering skills, specialized programming skills. So those are the type of things I think we need to declare a skill emergency and build, and that remains our biggest challenge. We do have young people, we do have talented young people, we do have hungry for success young people. Those elements are there, but the training element is starkly missing.
So what you're identifying is a gap between the demand and supply. While there may be ambition and the desire to go abroad, not necessarily will you have the right skill set and the expertise and the mindset. So that needs to be worked on. What I noticed, Hammad Saab, Premier Consultancy, of course, has a legacy, and you've been operating out of central London for a while. And I noticed that you have regional offices in Lisbon, Athens, and Dubai. How are these three destinations different, and what would be the promise of each for Pakistani businesses?
Okay, look, in terms of Premier Consultancy, we are a UK-centric business. So Athens and Lisbon were really aimed at for the time when Brexit happened, and there were a lot of businesses who felt that they need to be part of Europe, finding some kind of residency solution in Europe. So that's kind of background to Athens and Portugal. However, in terms of Dubai is a different situation because we've been working on bringing businesses into UK from abroad and helping them set up. And Middle East is a big market for us. The number of businesses from Southeast Asian countries who have set up in Dubai, and they are looking for expansion into European markets. So for us, having a presence in Dubai was always required. But obviously, you have to move in when the time is right. So we waited for the right opportunity, right team to be in place. That's the story behind Dubai. And Dubai is an extremely vibrant market, and you get to work with a lot more different nationalities than you would in any European country. So, it is a learning experience for everyone.
So for these destinations, Hammad Saab, if I may probe you a little bit more, are there priority industries and businesses which can perhaps be processed a little more swiftly as compared to others? What would your advice be to Pakistani businesses?
Look, service industry is always easier to expand. Having said that, there are a number of wonderful manufacturing organizations in Pakistan, including, Salco, where, we kind of dominate the world when it comes to surgical goods and sports industry. However, again, I'm baffled why, those companies have not expanded into other international markets. They're sort of very locally focused, and perhaps, I don't know, Sajjad Sahab, who's knows the Pakistan market far better than I do.
I think it's a brilliant juncture to sort of segue into his expertise. Sajjad Sahab, this is something we notice about a lot of Pakistani businesses that are doing great. They've been around for decades, but somehow, even when they are ginormous, they tend to have like a comfort zone, and they don't want to venture into the international market. What keeps them stuck in that zone?
Most of our companies actually, for some reason, we didn't build our brands. We actually, if you look at textiles or most of the other industries, we actually white label for those brands, right? So if you are just white labeling products and you don't have your own brand name, it doesn't make sense to actually build, to actually venture outside, right? They do have like sales offices. Some of them do. Some of them have their sales offices in Europe and Canada and North America. Some of them have their warehouses there, which is a requirement for some companies. But in terms of moving a manufacturing unit is difficult. It requires a lot of approvals, and plus one of our major advantage, competitive advantage, was the cost of our labor force, right? So if you move to Europe and North America, that particular advantage just doesn't exist. So those were the kind of things. And if you see, there are similar things if you look around in India. The large manufacturing units tend not to go, right? Because they generally, if you're building for like an Adidas or a Nike or some other major brand, white labeling, it doesn't make sense for you to go, right? Because you just export and that's it, right? And then you expand locally. Somehow I think we missed the boat around 70s. I personally believe that, and I don't know, my limited, if I were running a textile company in the 70s, I would have set up my own brand, right? I think.
But Sajjad Sahab, the reality really seems to have shifted since the COVID. So the world is only slowly reeling out of it. My question to you would be, what is 2023 and beyond looking like? Like, a lot of analysis is based around that the world is probably going to head into recession. So a very logical question would be, do we enter into a phase, we try to move territories, but what if it's a global phenomenon?
It is a global phenomena, and especially if you, and I can, again, coming from an IT area, and as Hammad also mentioned, for services, it is easier. Because you can have a back office and it's very easy to set up things. You can hire a couple of people from the local market and move on. And a lot of service companies do have, a lot of IT companies have international offices and presence. We do, certainly in Dubai and a couple of other countries, and are planning to expand globally. Now, when the global recession comes in, I believe for Pakistani companies it is a great opportunity, especially in the IT sector, if we play our cards right. And then, of course, with our rupee devaluing, we again are competitive financially. So that again is an advantage. A lot of contracts which were closed and locked by lots of large global players are now open. So the companies which were dealing with the likes of Wipros and Tatas and Infosys and Accentures and PwCs, and Hammad Sahab and I are both ex-PwC. PwCs and Ernst & Youngs of the world, they can no longer afford them. So if we can provide value for money, there is a great opportunity, and we are seeing that growth. I mean, we grew 44% last year. So that particular opportunity is there. It's right for us to take it, provided, I mentioned it, provided we can provide value for money. And in services sector, it is actually the quality of your consultant or quality of your staff which makes the difference. Now, do we have?
Let's try and switch and flip to the other side of the spectrum. And Hammad Sahab, this one's probably going to be a volley, but It's no fun if we don't address the elephant in the room. और ये सवाल मैं खास तौर पे उर्दू में आपसे करना चाहती हूँ because मैं चाहूंगी कि ज्यादा लोग इसको समझ पाएं. मुझे ये बताइए कि जब हम कह रहे हैं कि इस वक्त बिजनेसेस के लिए एलसीज खोलना मुश्किल है, डॉलर हमारे यहाँ स्टेबलाइज नहीं हो रहा, अगर किसी भी मुल्क में आप अपने बिजनेस को ग्रो करना चाहते हैं, एक्सपैंड करना चाहते हैं, आपको यहाँ से सरमाया उस दूसरे मुल्क में मूव करना पड़ेगा. ये कैसे पॉसिबल होगा और इसमें आप कैसे हमारी मदद कर सकती है आपकी कंसल्टेंसी?
देखें, जो आपकी एक्सचेंज रिस्ट्रिक्शंस हैं उनको तो बाईपास नहीं किया जा सकता, वो तो हैं.
बिल्कुल.
अनफॉर्चुनेटली पाकिस्तानी बिजनेसेस हैव लेफ्ट इट टू लेट. ये जो क्रंच इस वक्त आया हुआ है पाकिस्तान में, ये अगर कोई भी पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी को क्लोजली देख रहा होता तो दे वुड हैव नोन कि ये एक ना एक दिन होना है, और उसके लिए प्लानिंग पहले से करनी चाहिए. एक दफा इंग्लिश में कहते हैं once horse is bolted it's too late. तो इस वक्त सिचुएशन पाकिस्तान में कुछ इसी तरह की है. लेकिन देखें, जिन लोगों की, जो हमारे सक्सेसफुल बिजनेस फैमिलीज हैं, जो बिजनेसमैन हैं, उनके सब के बाहर एसेट्स मौजूद हैं, एंड lot of it is invested in property which is not producing anything. For me, property investment is a dead asset. आप economically आप कोई contribution नहीं कर रहे हैं किसी economy में. Use that money to now globalize your business, internationalize things. Especially जो हमारे exporters वगैरह हैं, they have to think about moving abroad and transferring some of the contracts which they have with their Pakistani companies to an international company. So there are opportunities, there are options available, and again वही बात है कि if there's will there's a way. तो पहली चीज तो ये कि आपने you have to make up your mind कि हाँ जी मैंने बाहर जाना है और बिजनेस करना है, बिजनेस को एक्सपैंड करना है, बिजनेस को इंटरनेशनलाइज करना है.
तो अगर मैं आपकी बात सही समझ पाई हूँ, हमारे यहाँ इस वक्त पैनिक की सिचुएशन ऐसी है कि जो लोग अपने बिजनेस को चला नहीं पा रहे हैं या मुश्किलात देख रहे हैं, वो अपने सेटअप्स को, अपनी फैक्ट्रीज को बंद कर रहे हैं, वो लैंड को बेच रहे हैं, मशीनरी को स्क्रैप वैल्यू पे बेच रहे हैं, और उस तमाम पैसे को लेकर बाहर जाके, वही आपने जैसे कहा कि या तो प्रॉपर्टी में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं या पैसे को बैंक में रख रहे हैं, एक रेंट सीकर्स एटीट्यूड आ रहा है. आप कह रहे हैं कि ये एक परफेक्ट अपॉर्चुनिटी है where through some planning and with the advice of consultants like yourself, you can guide them to continue doing business and perhaps even continue growing and expanding.
Exactly, जी. The world, दुनिया में अपॉर्चुनिटीज होती हैं. हम ग्लोबल रिसेशन की बात करते हैं, लेकिन रिसेशन में जितनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज रिसेशन में निकलती हैं probably बूम टाइम पे नहीं होती, क्योंकि बूम टाइम पे वर्ल्ड इज वेरी competitive. रिसेशन का टाइम इज द बेस्ट टाइम to look at business opportunities or expansion mode में आने के लिए.
And you've got to be hungry. You've got to be hungry. सज्जाद साहब, आप क्या कहेंगे कि अब इस वक्त हम अगर दुनिया के सब तमाम बड़ी इकोनॉमीज को देखें, they're moving towards a multicultural national identity. I mean, they are trying to embrace the knowledge economy factor, bring in people who are talented, bring in people who are bright, who have ideas, who have solutions. That sounds like a very exciting time, especially for young Pakistanis.
Gee, absolutely. It is globally there's a hunt for talent, right? Countries compete on quality of their people. They compete on productivity. So you could have 200 million people, but if they're not productive, so it doesn't work, right? हमारे यहाँ ये एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है जी. Cultural sensitivity of our young generation and generally in a society is very low. That's the best way I can put it. It's very difficult for us to. We are not culturally sensitive, and हमें diversity में काम करने की आदत नहीं है. हमें uniformity of ideas, thought, belief का सिखाया जाता है बचपन से, which makes it very difficult, which creates actually a barrier for our people when they go abroad. It's a because we are quite set in it's my way or the highway sort of culture. So I think cultural sensitivity भी हमें, like recently there was a conference, a meeting, skill development at very high level. And my only comment was कि हमें university graduates को where we teach them, programming skills and English and whatnot, हमें cultural sensitivity भी शायद पढ़ानी चाहिए. हमें बताना चाहिए how to respect other cultures, religions, and this and that, because it is important. And if our expectation is to work in a diverse, multicultural company, right, or an organization, if this is what we aspire to do, this is something that needs to be built. हम तो अपनी organization में करते हैं in our limited way. As much as we can do. Communication skills हमारे इतने अच्छे नहीं है. We used to be an English speaking country. We no longer are. And that creates a lot of barriers. So communication skills far more than you see, organizations like us, जो businesses हैं, अपनी industry की knowledge हम सिखा लेते हैं. We can teach people how to do programming, how to do software development, and similarly a textile company has the ability कि वो textile के अंदर जो भी skill set है machines का वो सिखा दे. English सिखाना, cultural sensitivity सिखाना, ethics सिखाना, ये नहीं सिखा देता. ये कहीं और से सीख के आना पड़ेगा उसे, because we don't have that capacity, right? हमें भी English का teacher रखना पड़ता है जो हमारे भी strength नहीं है, right? So I think वहाँ पे हमें शायद government intervention की जरूरत है. As far as economic issue is concerned, मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि हमारे यहाँ जो कुछ हो रहा है, and I think we should address that elephant in the room as you mentioned. In my little opinion, ji, our economic problems are a symptom, not a cause. I believe हमारा problem शायद social है, जिसका result ये economic issues हैं जो हम आज face कर रहे हैं. तो हमें पहले शायद social issues resolve करने पड़ेंगे. Otherwise, every 6 months we are going to see the same thing. Every year we are going to see the same. अभी भी आप देखो, पहले हर 5-10 साल के बाद ये होता था, फिर 5 साल के बाद होना शुरू किया, फिर 2 साल के बाद होना शुरू हुआ, और अब हर 6 महीने के, और अब 3 महीने के बाद या 6 महीने के बाद ये होता है.
अच्छा, एक मार्केटिंग का रूल कहा जाता है कि if you have like a satisfied customer, he or she is probably going to share the success story or the brilliant experience with 1 or 2 people. On the other hand, somebody who's grieving, somebody who's felt betrayed, shortchanged, is probably going to share it with 10,000 people and would make sure everybody feels their pain. Hammad साहब, हमारे यहाँ जब आप proper planning करके नहीं जाते, there are all sorts of people that make up the world, and many businesses, many professionals have had bad experiences that have left a bad taste in the mouth with advisors who maybe provided with ill advice, and they have sort of now created a perception that A, this is difficult, B, it's tedious, there are many barriers to entry. So if I were to ask you, what are some of the common mistakes that in your practice you've noticed that businesses from Pakistan who wanted to explore and expand in international territories, they make? What are those mistakes?
I can give you a very short answer. They look for shortcuts. Okay. They will, unfortunately, whenever I have tried to deal with a Pakistani businessman wanting to expand into Europe and all that, they try and find shortcuts. They try and find how they can avoid not paying tax, how they can avoid not spending money on XYZ. If you're coming into international market, come on, you have to accept what the norms are in that society. You have to run a business properly. There will be bank transactions. You cannot run a business on cash transactions in any developed country. So those are the sort of challenges. And then they end up going to consultants who would facilitate them in doing what they want to do. And of course it will fail. These things fail in any international market. You don't, there's a family-owned home business which you can run from, shop under your apartment or whatever. And then there's corporate businesses. And if you're moving into corporate environment, it's a culture, it's a different culture. And you have to adopt that culture. You cannot impose your working practices in a corporate environment. And that is the biggest challenge I have found, at least, with working with Pakistani businessmen.
Now, having said that, I'm sure that we must have some advantages. And I say that because the world's moving into new standards of ESG. and they're encouraging diversity, they're trying to be inclusive, they're embracing good ideas, especially ones that are trying to tackle climate impact. So if I were to ask you if there's a social impact or a climate impact organization with a brilliant idea in Pakistan, wanting to grow in that category, do they get any brownie points, especially if such an initiative is a woman-led initiative?
Well, definitely they do. Definitely. I mean, I've been looking out for any such professional businesses who have real professional ambition, who are willing to embrace corporate culture. Those kind of businesses, they will succeed. They will definitely succeed in international market. There's no two ways about it. It's really, and Sajjad Sahab said correctly that, there are certain cultural issues which we are unable to get over. If we can, accept the world the way it is, as opposed to putting, our branding on it, then, life becomes much easier.
But acceptance sounds like surrender. So if we were to make it dynamic for our dynamic businesses and entrepreneurs, I think one of our business coaches put it right when they said, the future belongs to those who are willing to unlearn and relearn. So what you've pointed out is this ability to probably park the mindset that we're not looking for shortcuts. आप जिंदगी में जहां पे भी shortcut लेना चाहेंगे, आगे जाके you will realize what a big mistake that was. So Sajjad Sahab, agar main aapse पूछूं, because you've worked across industries and sectors, similar question but slightly different verbatim. दो चीजें ऐसी जो पाकिस्तानियों को अनलर्न करने की जरूरत है जब आप एक ग्लोबल लैंडस्केप, ग्लोबल कैनवस पे खेल रहे होते हैं, आपके ख्याल में दो ऐसी आदतें, दो ऐसी चीजें जो पता नहीं क्यों हमारे अंदर हैं, and the sooner we get rid of them, we unlearn and relearn, will be massively successful.
लेकिन जी एक तो प्रॉब्लम हमारा ये कि वी आर अ लो ट्रस्ट सोसाइटी और हम somehow हमारी बिजनेसेस ओनरशिप और मैनेजमेंट को सेग्रीगेट नहीं कर सकते. We are unable to separate ownership and management. Consequently, होता ये कि हमारे corporate sector को आप देखें, every 30 years or so हमारी companies कम हो जाती हैं because it divides into sons or children or whatever. So instead of making large corporate houses and making corporations, we end up becoming 1/5. So, and we've seen many large, very good Pakistani companies just split हो जाती हैं. And जिससे economies of scale की जो advantages होते हैं वो disadvantages आ जाते हैं. So if you turn around and really see, and if you look at global company like Procter and Gamble were two people, right? Schlumberger is the name of some state, right? Just like whatever. But sometime उन्होंने ownership और management को कर लिया और hunt for talent कर लिया और फिर management को empower भी किया. हम लोग शायद वो transition नहीं कर पाते. Check signing authority हम सिवाय के किसी और को नहीं दे पाते. उसका problem ये होता है कि हम लोग proper controls नहीं कर पाते. I mean, if you look at all the multinationals like the ones I work with, SAP, Oracle, PwC, whatever. I was country manager for a few of them. I never met my CEO. I never, I met them probably once. He was on the stage. I was one of the 100 people sitting below him. But एक रुपए का कभी इधर उधर नहीं हुआ because there were controls there. So I think एक बहुत बड़ी हमारे जो big business को कई को challenges हैं वो ये कि we because of the way we are structured, हम बहुत सारे काम निकलवा लेते हैं without going through the right process. So शायद वो grooming ही नहीं होती कि it's okay to stand in line sometimes, right? If you're fifth in line, wait for your turn, right? So वो grooming हमें शायद बचपन से कई दफा challenges आते हैं. And those who don't have that, and I would not like to generalize. I wouldn't say कि सारे पाकिस्तानी एक तरह के. I think that's a racist statement. ये सारे पाकिस्तानी बिजनेस एक तरह के नहीं होते. We are 220 million people. यहाँ पे हर तरह के लोग होते हैं. And there are some who've done very well. They've grown internationally. They've done well. They've proper professional setup. There are many of them. But there are many of them जो many है. And I think वो percentage शायद थोड़ी है. But over time सीख जाएंगे.
लेकिन सजाद साहब मुझे ये भी लगता है कि if I look back in time and when the world was going through a recessionary pressure back in 2010, और उसके साथ साथ we've lived a decade of terrorist attacks and radicalization and war on terror, मुझे लगता है कि वो जैसे शायर कहता है ना, मुश्किलें इतनी पड़ी मुझ पे कि आसान हो गई. So Pakistani managers and business owners, every day this firefighting, this management of poly crisis comes to us very naturally. So while the world got a little jolted when things were uncertain and uncertainty became the new certainty, Hammad sir, would you say that, you know, the resilience and the ability to think out of box and the ability to hold your ground and to firefight, that is probably a Pakistani business owner's great strength. That muscle is already very strong.
Correct. Yes. I mean, look, you know, the amount of talent there is in Pakistan, the amount of innovation there is in Pakistan, and, you know, the successful Pakistani business people who have, you know, set up companies abroad and all that, and sort of embraced the international culture and all that, they have been phenomenal. So I think, you know, that it's a kind of a double-edged sword, because I think, yes, that kind of emergency became a norm for a lot of businesses, but that also gave the false impression that, oh, we can survive through everything.
Yes.
And that has kind of led to the situation Pakistan is in now, because it was, you know, to be better word, you know, Allah sambhalega, or, you know, Allah, whatever, those kind of comments which come from Pakistani people when you talk to them. You know, you have to do something. Allah will not come and help you every step of the way. So, you know, so yeah, that it has been a double-edged sword in my.
जैसे उर्दू में कहते हैं, हरकत में बरकत है. पहले आपको अपना काम करना पड़ेगा. You'll have to plan, evaluate, strategize, take action, and then believe that divine intervention and help will arrive. But Hammad sir, tell me something. If today a business decides to move, although we've discussed that in the long term it's already pretty late because we seem to be in a friction, you know, in a sticky place right now. What are the timelines we're looking at if a medium-sized business is planning to expand or go to one of these European destinations or expand into Europe and, I mean, maybe the Middle Eastern market? What's the timeline we're looking at?
The timeline is pretty straightforward. You know, you're talking about few weeks to months to, you know, you can easily set up an operational business in any country within 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
And some of, you know, setting up business in some of the European countries is easier than some of the Asian countries. But at the end of the day, you know, it is possible. And Dubai market is open for business, and Dubai is much closer to Pakistan as compared to any European country. And I think even culturally, people may find easier to fit into Dubai culture as opposed to, you know, moving to Europe. So yeah, you know, from and Dubai business setup it's a process one has to go through, but you know, it's doable. It's within 4 to 6 weeks, you can have your company bank account up and running.
Very true. So the timeline seems straightforward. There's help available, there's advice available, multiple options, and people could be working out of Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, Dubai, depending on your appetite. And if you're in if you would have replay, send us your questions, tell us what is landing with you. Whatever is landing with you, please feel free to comment on it, tell us more about it, and add it to the comments. Sajjad Saab, my next question to you would be, jab uncertainty hoti hai, beyakini hai market mein, so knee-jerk reaction businesses की तरफ से भी आ रहे हैं, customer की तरफ से भी आ रहा है, आपके stakeholders की तरफ से भी आ रहे हैं, but more importantly, the government, the policy makers are also trying to gauge what the situation is like. So when you become overly protective, if you're trying to sort of create barriers from the capital outflow, or for a lack of a better term, to kind of contain the expansion of Pakistani businesses, into a spillover. Do you think they're on the right track, or what more government intervention could you ask for to facilitate the Pakistani businesses?
Very good question, Ji. Okay, first of all, somebody needs to tell me what's the Pakistan plan. Is there one? I don't know. We are one of the, I would say, very few Pakistani companies जो ऑर्गेनिकली ग्रो करके मल्टीनेशनल बनी है, 3-4 ममालिक में हैं, कुछ काम कर रहे हैं, किसी जगह इनकॉर्पोरेटेड हैं, किसी जगह हम फ्रेंचाइज मॉडल पे कर रहे हैं. But when I look at the economy, what's the Pakistan plan? I've asked that to a couple of present and ex, no, not the present one, but we've asked a couple of finance ministers and some people who are in the know. So there has to be a Pakistan plan. So somebody needs to, and that's where the government comes in, right? Whatever, if they need to do for us to do A, B, C, D, or E, and whatever short-term pains we need to take, let's hear them out, right? There has to be a plan. So I think the biggest thing that we are missing is कि जैसे हम अपनी organizations में करते हैं, right? So whenever there's a shock, and there in our country, as पहले आपने mention किया कि हर वक्त ही shock रहता है. So at that point in time, I think our business leaders and all, we are aware of the fact कि जी अगर shock है, temporary shock है, हमने short term में क्या करना है, medium term में क्या करना है, उसमें क्या करना है. For instance, COVID जब आया तो we sat together, we grew in COVID. Initially there was a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knew कि वो एक हफ्ते की बात कर रहे हैं, हम 1 महीने की बात कर रहे हैं, 6 महीने की बात कर रहे हैं, साल की बात कर रहे हैं, किसकी बात कर रहे हैं? And the world was shutting down, right? I mean, are we ever going to come out?
Yes.
So हम लोगों ने जो what we did was we had like 3 or 4 waves and we did proper scenario building. कि अगर ये हुआ तो ये करेंगे, ये we had to go through 2 of them. Luckily we didn't have to go through all of them, but at least second, third तक हम चले गए. और उस वक्त भी आपने ये देखना है, and that's where business acumen comes in. कि आपने कितना aggressive होना है और क्या आपकी रिस्क एपेटाइट विद टाइम्स कितनी चेंज होनी है, किन मार्केट्स में एग्रेसिव होना है, किन जगह पे नहीं होना. अगर आप लेट्स से कोविड अगर वेस्ट में है तो क्या कैन वी एक्सप्लोर अफ्रीका फॉर इंस्टेंस, जहां पे नहीं है. देयर लॉट्स ऑफ पीपल हु लिव इन अफ्रीका, दे रिक्वायर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. व्हाट आर वी डूइंग देयर? अगर आपके यूरोप के अंदर कोई क्राइसिस, अगर ब्रेक्सिट हो रहा है और आपका बहुत मैसिव एक्सपोजर है उधर, व्हाट आर यू डूइंग अबाउट इट? सो हमें प्रोएक्टिव होने की जरूरत है. और हमें बेसिकली अपनी रिस्क प्रोफाइल देख के एक्सपेंशन को, एंड बिजनेसेस आई पर्सनली बिलीव शुड ऑलवेज बी एक्सपेंडिंग.
Yes.
So the minute you're not, you die, right? I mean, that's when the death starts, downward spiral starts. In terms of Pakistani economy, yes, we are in a lot of trouble. There is no denying that, right? But I think what is the bigger problem right now is we don't have a Pakistan plan, or at least I don't know of it. If anybody has it, at least I don't know of it. I don't know of any business person who knows of it. So I think ये एक काफी lacking है जहाँ पे government direction चाहिए होगी हमें.
So it's very interesting, Ji. It's very interesting, Sajjad Saab, that you mentioned that, because the country the size of Pakistan, I was reading one of these MIT journals, and they forecasted that the only kind of Pakistan plan that would work is if we had large-scale manufacturing happening in Pakistan. The others could be the plugins, like IT and other innovative products could be a plugin. But the kind of population and the youth bulge we have, we need employment and more employment opportunities. लेकिन हमारे जी
देखिए, मैं थोड़ी बात से डिसएग्री करता हूँ. हम लोग आई थिंक आपसे थोड़े जरा ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट भी हैं. When we say कि हमारे बहुत ज्यादा एंटरप्रेन्योरियल है और लोग बड़े अच्छे हैं और लाइक हैं और सारा कुछ है, that's not true. Israel produces more patents than Pakistan. तो शायद हमारे एक प्रोविंस के साइज का भी. सिंगापुर में ज्यादा पैटेंट्स फाइल होते हैं. तो हम, बट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वी हैव टू लिव इन रियलिटी, राइट? वी हैव टू.
सजा साहब, मेरा कहने का मकसद ये था कि हम कई दफा डिस्कस करते हैं ना सिंगापुर मॉडल या दुबई मॉडल. मसला ये है कि दुबई मॉडल एंड सिंगापुर मॉडल वर्क्स ऑन द पॉपुलेशन साइजेस ऑफ दीज टू कंट्रीज.
एग्जैक्टली. सो
हमारे जैसे बड़े मुल्क के लिए हमें मल्टीपल एरियाज को एक्सप्लोर करना पड़ेगा. बट दैट ब्रिंग्स,
and that is what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. Like if we have 220 million people with 60% of the people below, young people. अब हमें ये पता है कि लार्ज स्केल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अगर आपकी आएगी तो वो क्या करेंगे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग? हमारे लोग तो वेल्डिंग नहीं कर सकते. हमारे तो हमारे एजुकेशन की डेफिनेशन में अपना नाम लिखना है या अरबिक में कुरान मजीद पढ़ना है. नो हार्म इन दैट, नथिंग रॉन्ग विद दैट. ऑब्वियसली wonderful skill to have. But is it something which is marketable?
So what you're talking about is, of course, the skill set again. But Hammad, what I wanted to segue into was that there are business houses in Pakistan that for decades have been running manufacturing businesses very successfully. और आप बारहा कह रहे हैं और वाकई दुनिया जिस तरह है कि शायद सर्विसेज के लिए नॉलेज बेस्ड सर्विसेज एंड प्रोडक्ट्स के लिए टेरिटरीज में एक्सपैंड करना ज्यादा आसान हो. तो व्हाट डज इट मीन फॉर बिजनेसेस जो हाई नेटवर्थ हैं, जिनके पास decades का experience है of running manufacturing units and brands and products in Pakistan? How do they expand in today's world?
देखें, जो इस तरह के businesses हैं, again, the way the Pakistani situation is, and the market is, it is quite challenging for such businesses to look at expansion, capital restrictions and everything else. The only, in my view, the options they have is to try and win more contracts, promote their businesses abroad, and it comes back to branding. If you have a recognized brand which you can promote in foreign countries and all that, and win more contracts, and as you mentioned, expand manufacturing side of things, then it is doable. But again, they will need to come out of their shell. They will need to come out and adopt international way of doing business. So building your brand, building your identity, scalability of your business, all those things come into it. And as Sajjad was saying, separating ownership and management and all that. So all those things matter, to turn a business into an international business. And for that, yes, setting up, sales or marketing offices would be a good start.
So hypothetically speaking, if a manufacturing business comes to you and would like you to explore expanding into one of the destinations you consult for, और वो आपसे कहें कि हमें वहाँ पे possible partners for joint ventures की scouting कर दें, and of course make a roadmap for us कि हम पहले अपना sales and marketing office वहाँ पे खोलें, फिर वहाँ पे potential इस तरह के लोग जिनके साथ मिलकर काम किया जा सकता है या जिनके साथ हाथ मिलाया जा सकता है, आप उनसे हमें मिलवाएं, उनसे हमारी scouting करें. Is that the kind of consulting that Premier Consultancy does?
Correct, yes. I give you an example. We have just been approached by a business in Dubai. They do environmentally friendly kind of food exports and so on, environmental sustainable food exports. And they're interested in setting up operations in the UK. And, as part of the setup process, we're helping them with finding out, what approvals they need, what kind of regulatory requirements they need to follow, and what other competitors are there, and how they can team up with some of them to expand their business. So it depends, and each solution is bespoke based on the client's requirement.
Absolutely. Hammad Sahab, I think it would be sheer negligence on my part if I don't ask you about how is the UK market doing. There's a very natural partnership. People from Pakistan and from Britain, they have been collaborating for long. There is a huge Pakistani origin diaspora in the UK. Since the Brexit and since COVID, how has the UK market responded? And what are some of the opportunities that have been created for Pakistani businesses in that regard?
Look, I'll be quite honest, Brexit has been a disaster for Britain. There's no two ways about it. And economy and, the politics in Britain and all that, we've had more prime ministers in last 3-4 years there than in Pakistan. So that tells you something. So, that we're not, Britain is going through a bad patch at the moment, but the point is that at this point in time, there will be opportunities coming up, because sooner or later things will turn around in Britain. At the moment, yes, they may be not looking so rosy, but sooner or later things will turn around, and Britain still remains very close to Europe. There's still people who willing to explore European markets. Britain would be their first choice purely because of language, if nothing else. English is well spoken and understood in Pakistan relatively compared to German or French or Italian. So, there's still opportunities there. Yeah, you just have to be brave to ride out the storm, as to say, for next year or so.
For most of the people, they will tell you that perception, I mean, economy is 80% perception and 20% reality. If we
Correct.
unpack that, Sajjad Saab, I would want to know, especially in the territories mentioned and Middle East and Europe, how do the South Asian businesses fare against each other, irrespective of size, if all things being equal and constant? Other South Asian businesses, be they be Bangladeshi, Indian, Sri Lankan, are they competition or are they possible alliances there?
I think there's a co-competitive relationship. Now, in terms of, if I can just look at our industry, and I generally tend to, I'm sorry, I tend to focus on things that I know a little bit about as opposed to making general statements about, because one has to be very specific about these things. We don't see a number of Bangladeshi companies in the technology sector. However, we do see a number, because most of their work, their own economy has been growing very well. We used to do projects in Bangladesh, but now a lot of those local industry has developed. During my Oracle days, Bangladesh was one of the territories that we managed out of Pakistan. Now it's probably in the other direction. So, and that has happened in the last, 15 years. So, so most of the Bangladeshi technology companies are now focused within the Bangladeshi economy. So we don't see a lot of Bangladeshi companies coming out. We do see a lot of Indian companies, of course. We do see some Sri Lankan companies as well. In terms of prices and the economic opportunity, we do collaborate with a number of Indian companies. Actually, these days we are moving a lot of development centers from India to Pakistan. So we are working with a number of Indian companies, so developing software for them and with them. But we also compete with a number of them. We recently won a project in Qatar, competing against Tata, the Wipros and Infosys and all. So yeah, so there's a competitive relationship. We compete at quite a places. And Indian technology companies, industry, and we are actually not a comparison. They're about $200 million worth of exports. We are around two. So it's really not a comparison at all. Actually, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go.
I think that really sums up and gives us a lot of food to sort of reflect upon. And I just want to remind all our viewers that you're watching us streaming right now on the socials of Premier Consultancy. But at the same time, if you're watching a replay, please do not hesitate in sending us your questions and your queries. Our team members from Premier Consulting are actually going to get back to you with answers to your questions. And while we are at the final few minutes, I also want to remind you that this is the first of our series of these insightful conversations being brought to you by the Premier Consultancy. Any question you have about business expansion, growth mindset, how to actually explore these territories, their advice is available. And of course, the same themes will be covered in these conversations. Hammad Saab, Sajjad Saab, before we wind up, because today we're kickstarting these conversations with having a growth mindset. If I were to, request you each to take a couple of minutes to convey to our viewer what a growth mindset is like and what does it mean in the present day world of business. Matza.
For me, growth mindset is traveling the world, looking at opportunities, understanding different cultures, and finding business opportunities, finding local partnerships. Because when you expand, you have to have local culture, local knowledge, and finding local partnerships. So that is important. But again, you have to come out of your shell. That's the first thing. You have to have the ambition to grow you have to believe in your product and service, that can serve the world, not just few in your own home country. And if you go out with that mindset that you can deliver, you can expand, then nothing will stop you. All other problems will fade away.
So you're unstoppable when you are absolutely clear in your intention and you make up your mind that this is what you want to do. Excellent advice. Thank you so much for that, Hammad Saab. Sajjad Saab, what would be your definition of a growth mindset in the business world?
Where do you want to end up in life? That's part of the interviews. So अगर आपकी, and I think that's where ambition comes in, कि आप खत्म करना चाहते हैं कि आप Mercedes चलाएं, Honda City चलाएं या जेट चलाएं, right? मेरे ख्याल में the world is our oyster. We are very bullish. हमारे expansion plans में सिंगापुर, नॉर्थ अमेरिका में अपने proper offices खोलना है, UK में ऑफिस खोलना है, और we are working in that direction. So I'll be talking to Hammad Saab and his team. I'm sure इसीलिए शायद मुझे I didn't know him prior to this thing. So there is और दूसरा growth mindset ये कि never be satisfied, right? You always have to be hungry and you always have to stay relevant. And you have to see what business you are in, right? It's very important to define what you're doing. For instance, हम लोग जब शुरू किया तो लोग कहते हैं we are in ERP business और enterprise software systems बनाते थे. And I think that is wrong. या हम software business पे, no, we are not also in the software business. We are in the business, जो हमेशा मैं कहता हूँ, we are in the business to provide business solutions. अगर वो if it requires a software solution, so be it. For instance, अभी हम sustainability के products build कर रहे हैं globally, plan in the global market with SAP and the sales forces of this world. The idea is कि the world has to be, we have to stay ahead of the curve. हम लोग IoT के अंदर हमने बहुत सारी चीजें की, अपने patents globally, EU में, North America में, China में, we filed our own patents. The idea is that if Google or WhatsApp multi-billion-dollar companies कर सकती हैं, 70 years में we haven't been able to produce one global brand. We've been around 70 years, that's a long time, right? So let's aspire, let's try. We might fail, if we would have tried. So, I don't want to end up my life at least not trying, right?
And I think one of my favorite sayings of all time would be failure is never permanent. And you can't fail unless you accept failure. So even, remember Edison, he turns around and said, I've only discovered 99 ways of how it's not done. And I've still to discover the way I will move forward. Sajjad Syed Sahab and Hammad Farooqi Sahab, it was a pleasure to speak to both of you. You had some really insightful nuggets of knowledge and wisdom for our viewers today. And I'm sure कि जितना मैंने इस conversation को enjoy किया है, I'm sure a lot of other people have been able to pick up things that would inspire them into action. It's time you take action. Don't be a sitting duck. And you get to lean in for support. If you have questions, send us your questions. Our team members are going to get back to you, and we'll try our best to guide you and make this a smooth sailing for all of you. Thank you very much. And this brings us to the end of our conversation. Until next time, take good care of yourself, and we'll be back. And do send us your feedback about this one. Khuda Hafiz.